So yeah, I would. I mean, for the price, you can't beat it.
Yeah.
HD video, great sound.
All right.
You know.
I'll get one.
Yeah, do it. Want any water or something?
Nothing.
Nice.
I don't want to distract, but I will get up from time to time to make sure everything's still running. This guy in particular likes to cut out.
That's what he said about his. It cuts off.
I don't know if it just.
Did you hear that?
What?
His cuts off too.
Well, mine cuts off kind of completely. Like, it shuts off.
I mean, he was just complaining that it just shuts off after about 2 minutes or something.
I think the other night when I tried taping, I got about 16 minutes of something, and then it just cuts out, and then I tried to do a couple other ones, and the batteries were fine. I mean, they checked
That's
out.
annoying.
They checked out. It was fine when I.
Got to be a preference choice.
It might be. Or maybe. Well, I'm still
Some
learning.
kind of setting.
I'm still learning.
A preference choice.
Well, setting.
Yeah, just some sort of setting.
Alright. Yeah, it's shitty.
Yeah. Just
Right.
set it on not bad, and then maybe it'll be better.
All right.
Let's see. I'm gonna
Are we all play?
Yeah.
put 2 pillows behind, so I'm not all belly and beard. Little bitty eyes, little forehead.
Yeah, sorry I didn't mention anything about the videotaping. I had sort of forgotten.
I assumed there would be something going on.
Yeah.
Your tripod, is it sagging? It's definitely leaning to the left.
Oh, yeah, it is. There we go. Now it's leaning to the
A
right.
slow-mo sag. Or the right for you. Yes.
I guess we're all there, right? Sagging in slow motion.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I remember your hair being bushy and curly.
Yeah, it was pretty.
Yeah, it was more wavy, wasn't it?
Pretty thin on top, and over the years it just goes. It was like my father had a comb over. I thought, no.
Yeah.
But I like. I decided I like it not because I have no choice. Decided I like it or not,
Yeah.
and it keeps you honest.
Yeah.
Short
Well,
hair.
it suits you. It looks good.
It
Yeah, it
saved,
looks
saved
good.
me a lot of time too. 'Cause I haven't
Super simple.
had to get it cut or styled or
Do you
washed in
do
20
you
years.
buzz it or?
I've taken to doing that lately. Like Friday night, I'll just shave it completely, and then by Monday morning, it's
Oh,
feeling
you-
enough, and I go back to school.
Yeah. I just cut mine after attempting to let it grow. It got pretty long. Got long enough to put in a ponytail.
I like that look better.
It
What hair to
so
do.
much easier to deal with. I tried it, and my my band is like, oh, grow your hair, grow your hair.
I'm glad you're still
Rock and roll.
I'm glad you're both still playing. I love Harper Fragment.
Yeah,
Thanks.
cool. Thanks.
I still got some of your music too on cassette.
Cassette, yeah.
We have. I made a CD finally.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That was a long time ago.
Of Harper Fragment or of doing
Uh-huh.
stuff?
It's a compilation of excerpts of improvs.
I would love to get that.
Do you have one? I could just burn you
I've
another
got one.
Do you have just a plain
I
one?
can certainly get you one. It's a complicated thing to burn a CD over here now because the CD player or burner on my desktop is like you put a CD in, it just ejects it.
Oh.
So I've got to put it on a flash drive, bring it over to the laptop, and then put it on the
Right.
laptop, and then burn a CD. It's been a
Yeah.
pain in the ass, but I can certainly get one.
Well, I've waited 20 years.
Yeah.
A little longer
There you
won't
go.
hurt me.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's begin. I think everything's running. It's Michael Kilburn. It's March 23rd, I think, 2013, in Clarkston, Atlanta, talking with Scott Berland and Crash Hoffman or Robert
Hotman.
Johnson?
Well,
Hoffman,
Robert.
okay.
Yeah, Hoffman. It's hot. It's my new name is Crash Hotman,
Oh,
as
okay.
per, Dick Richards dubbed me Crash Hotman after a misunderstanding, and everybody cracked up and it stuck.
I
'Cause
mean,
I hate My real name was, Robert Johnson.
Right.
I always hated it.
And maybe the
Yeah, it's a lousy name for a musician.
I know it's got to be made up. I think you said at one point like I'm the only person, or probably.
Mom and you and even Mom calls me Crash sometimes,
No,
but
I just can't do it.
you and Gary.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I've been Crash since about '98.
Right. And so we're here talking about the 800 East documentary project. Could you each, first of all, introduce yourselves and describe what you're doing now?
Well, I am Crash Hotman, aka previously Robert Johnson. I am now in a band called Shade Tree Philosophy. It's sort of a blues, foot stomping, blues, rock, hillbilly.
Country in there.
Yeah, it's sort of a hillbilly sound, and I've been doing a lot of set work on movies and commercials lately, and I've slowed down in the art world considerably since about 1993. I'd love to get back into it.
What were you doing then? What sort of art?
I was doing everything back then. I was prolific on a daily basis. Just anything I could get my hands on. I was relying on found inspiration that I find, just anything that came to me, and I would do whatever.
I don't know. I disagree. I think that you were prolific until probably the late '90s. I'd say '97 or '98. Still
Really?
painting and doing. You were collecting a lot of stuff.
I was still collecting.
But I mean, you were still painting until the mid '90s.
Really?
Yeah, quite
Huh.
sure. Yeah.
Well, it seems like it's forever. It seemed like I thought I put it down at about '93 with that Shannon Melinde
Mm-hmm.
stint.
Right.
I did a series of psychic paintings, and on top of everything else, it was just too much to take, and that's kind of what I just kind of put art down for a while and started focusing more on music. I mean, after that. So.
And this is
And I'm Scott Burland, and I am a pharmacist and always have been.
and an artist as well?
I wouldn't call myself an artist, no. Musician. I've been playing music since I was about 6, and was in I guess that started publicly performing in the early '80s up in Massachusetts with a sort of a DIY performance art punk band kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And moved to Atlanta in 1990 and met Robert, and we started Harper Fragment at that time, and that went on until I guess '97 or so.
It was about '97.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And are you from here?
No, Tulsa, Oklahoma. I've been here since '89.
Okay. And what was your connection to 800 East?
Let's see. When I moved here, I enrolled at Atlanta College of Art, and I can't remember her name. She was my drawing teacher. I've been trying to remember her name, and she became, I think, the curator at the Modern in New York City.
Huh.
And she introduced me to oh gosh, I can't remember his name either. The guy that ran Little Beirut, if you remember that, over off I-20. Do you remember his name?
Lou Beirut.
Not Normando. Anyway, she knew Ed Woodham, and Ed Woodham 800 East was just starting.
Right.
And so, my memory is sort of failing a lot, but I remember her taking us as a class to it was Normando. I was confusing Rumondo and Normando. She took us over to Little Beirut off I-20, and then somehow that was connected to, I think Normando was working with Ed Woodham in some other capacity. Anyway, and that's how I got introduced to 800 East. And I wish I could remember her name. Ed will know her name. I'm sure he still talks to her.
And same story?
No, I guess, no, I didn't really have an introduction other than Robert and I either being asked to play or you lining something up or saying, hey, we have an opportunity to play at 800 East. and
It was all about, it was evolving at the same time. We did the show at King Plow on November 21st, 1990, I think it was.
Was that the first show?
Uh-huh.
Was it?
November 21st, 1990.
91. Maybe.
91.
Maybe 91.
And then
Can't remember.
I think Ed had asked us to start performing there, and it
Mhm.
became often that we
Yeah.
performed at 800 East.
And how would you describe 800 East? What was it?
It was a multidisciplinary arts center.
Sounds like a quote.
Performance house.
I read that somewhere.
It was,
Yeah, it was a venue that I was really familiar with, the type of venue I was really familiar with
Mhm.
over the years. There was these kind of DIY art galleries that would also have performance art and music and parties and.
So were there others in Atlanta at the time?
Not that I was very new to Atlanta. I think the only place other place similar that I was familiar with was Clang, and that was sort of on its way out as I moved. Just as I moved, I think I went to a couple of shows there, but it was much smaller space, and I don't think they really catered to art or visual art. Yeah, it was
yeah.
mostly music. And
Mhm.
that
So
sort
you
of-
were familiar from Boston.
Yeah, and from Massachusetts in general, there's a lot of that type of a venue that
Mhm.
were that sort of roped in a lot of different disciplines, and it was you could see anything
Mhm.
from film to music to visual art to
Mhm.
written stuff, and so.
Do you want to add anything to what 800 was?
800 East was extremely accessible. I feel like Ed really helped artists, provided a place for artists to do a lot of things, and it was very easy
Mhm.
to be involved with 800 East, and it was thriving.
Mhm. Can you describe the process a little bit of if someone wanted to do something? You said it was easy and accessible. So what
If it was sort of word of mouth almost, if you knew somebody or somebody knew somebody who knew somebody
Mhm.
at 800 East, it was very easy to get involved. It was just very easy to invite and be invited.
Mhm.
Do you? I just happened to think of something this morning. Actually, do you remember Bob Riley?
I remember the name. No, I'd have to say no.
Okay, I'll show you a picture, and just if you remember. But he was a guy who I was in Massachusetts in a group with for 10 years, and we did a lot of performing. And I moved here in '90. He moved here in '93, I think, and of course wanted to continue to perform. And so at some point, just as an example, I remember talking to Ed about trying to line up some kind of evening of, it was a short play that Bob had written, and we had some film and a little bit of music and this sort of thing. And Ed was like, okay, do it, pick a date,
Yeah.
and here's what you gotta do. I mean, and it was, it's not that he offered, that was a big help, just have somebody say that, but that's kinda where it's like, you wanna do it, do it. And if you want some help, I can help you to some extent. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It was
Right.
just like, you can do this.
Right.
It was more like, you have the capacity to do this, so just do it.
So when he said, "Here's what you got to do," what was it that you had to do?
Well, I think it was just in terms of getting the word out. You got to make posters, and you got to, at that time it was different pre-internet, or
Right.
whatever. So you had to contact Creative Loafing or the AJC or whatever, and just try to get the word out. Put the posters up at 800 East, around Little Five Points, whatever.
Yeah, that was the most.
And then also from a technical end, what needed to happen with lights and sound and seating, and so it was more just like that sort of help. It wasn't
Right.
like, yeah, I'll help you
Logistics.
work shit in. It's here's what you have to do. So
Right. Do you know anything about how it got started?
Mm-mm.
yeah, I
No.
didn't either. It was for me. It was always there.
Mhm.
I know that there were a lot of other people involved who had left really by the time I Freed, was he not instrumental in the early days? And he was
Well, there was
kinda long gone by that time.
Normando has something to do with it, I think, and things were shifting from Little Beirut, which was kind of an art performance space, more exterior, more of a compound. And for some reason, it was shifting over to 800 East. I can't really remember exactly.
So it did start in '89.
I think so.
Yeah.
89 or 90. It was right at the end.
Yeah. So what was Atlanta like at the time? Maybe the city and also specifically the art context.
Well,
I had being new into town. I didn't know anyone. When I
Well,
moved
that's
here.
a good perspective. Then, what
Yeah.
was your impression of this?
Well, I remember when I used to visit. I used to just come here when I was living in Boston because I had a feeling I wanted to move here, and just to get a feel for the town and what it was like, but didn't necessarily seek out anything out of the ordinary
Right.
on those trips. But when I got here, I remember picking up a copy of Creative Loafing, and when I was in Boston, there was the Boston Phoenix, and
Which just closed.
did it really?
Yeah, it just ceased after 47 years.
Wow, I love that paper, and I would eagerly get the paper and look at all the bars and see who was coming to town, who was playing, and that was just a routine of mine. So when I picked up a copy of Creative Loafing, just after moving, I remember looking through the clubs and who was in town. It's like, uh-oh.
Really?
No
Yeah.
one's in town.
And of course, I have a much different perspective now, but so it was slow going. I mean, I think I was here probably for not long, maybe a month, maybe 2 weeks. I don't know. And I thought, well, I got to get something going, so I put an ad in the paper in the Loaf to get a band going, and that's when Robert answered the ad. And I was thinking about that this morning too, and I think it probably was 10 people who responded to that ad, and Robert's the only one I'm still in contact with. There were some people, I think, over the years that I've run into that we tried to get something going with.
So you found each other in the personals.
Yes, we did. That's right.
Musicians exchange.
Yeah.
That's how I met Ed Woodham too. I answered an ad for his puppet show.
Okay.
I said, "Can I talk to Mr. Woodham?" He said,
There you go.
"This is Mr. Woodham."
But in terms of the art world, and I'm still not really fully connected into the visual art world. I have a little better sense of what it's about now than I did then, but it's been for me, it's been a great arc in terms of the music scene here and the performance scene.
A
over
great
the years, just-
arc. What do you?
Just an arc of
Gaining.
just not necessarily exposure, but just meeting people and new people. And then there's also people who've been here forever, and I'm not. It's interesting to me how that worked. I often take it for granted that I've been here so long, but over the years you meet a lot of people, and some people go away, but there's a lot of people who've been here a long time. So
I guess I'm curious about how 800 East fit into the broader cultural context. Its relation with if there were different tiers of art spaces, or what the relationship was between the official art world and the unofficial.
I think 800 East was.
it's pretty singular, I think.
It was singular, and it was a big hub for like a conglomeration of all the aspects of local underground art. I miss it. I miss that. I don't think it doesn't really exist now.
So if it was singular, what made it unique?
Well,
All the people, I think, the people who ran it, the people who came were involved with shows. I mean, it was my first exposure to drag culture, certainly, and it was a lot of fun, you know.
It was thriving, it was large, it was always pretty much a success. Rarely was there
Yeah, I
an
agree.
event that was, you know,
I mean, yeah,
ho-hum or
really
slow.
well attended, and
Yeah.
it was always something going on there. So
And it was definitely for everyone. It was, you know, the little red arm on the meter was always like, ah, while it was happening. It was always like, yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it was good.
it's interesting though how the venues come and go. I mean, I think of 800 East sort of ending, and then there was this period, and then iDrum sort of came into being, and that's still around but kind of gone.
Mhm.
To a large extent, I think it's still going, but and
There's a spirit flying around waiting to
yeah,
occupy
take
the
hold
next,
somewhere.
yeah.
But it seems like certainly in a town this big, there's always a refuge for
Mhm.
underground artists to.
Do you think the organizers were conscious of a mission or
No.
something they were trying to accomplish?
No,
Mm-mm.
I'd say
I just think Ed, I think, is the main guy. He just really wanted to do it. It's what he does, it seems like.
And yeah, I don't think that I think I think the mission was probably developed as time. I think there was actually a mission. I don't remember what it was, but I think at some point there was, because that's kind of what it turned into. You know?
Mhm. How would you describe what it turned into?
Well, I think of what it was towards the end. I think Ed was maturing as an artist and as an organizer, and as someone who could make things happen.
Mhm.
And I think the focus was shifted from the venue itself to projects that Ed.
The Art and Odd Places kind of.
Art and Odd Places, and also some of the big shows that were put on. There's stuff at Velvet,
Right.
and also there was a show which I wish was documented. Maybe it is. It was a self-help seminar.
Oh, yeah.
Create the Opportunity.
Create the
Yeah.
Opportunity,
It was like
yeah.
a
We've
marquee
got
or something.
documentation of that.
Is there really?
Good, good.
Todd Schaefer is
And
the
Yeah.
motivational speaker.
Malika, yeah.
Yeah.
With the little dog.
Yeah.
Lisa Marie, I think. But I think that particular performance. What's the word? I can't think. It really underscores
The scale of it.
the scale of, you know, what Ed could make happen. I mean, it was
Mhm.
like
It was
okay,
humongous.
It was. I mean, I just remember, you know, the lights and the stage and the microphones and the PA and the
And the
slide
clogging.
projectors.
The
I
clogging.
think it was clogging.
Was there really?
To me though, the
What's
one
the
that actually what crested that or trumped that was the High Museum.
That's true.
When
That's
we got to
another one.
trash the High,
Yeah.
that was surreal. That was the most surreal
Joseph's
experience.
voice thing.
It still hasn't been topped, in as far as I'm concerned, because being able to do what we did to the High.
That was wonderful. Yeah.
Could you describe that show a little bit?
Well, it was chaotic going into it. I don't
Lots
think
going on there.
anybody really had a clue exactly what they were going to be doing.
Anybody of the performers? Or
The performers, everybody
I don't
just
think
kind
they
of had.
knew how it was going to fit into a larger.
It was huge, yeah.
performance.
We were just going to occupy it and do it was kind of an improv based performance.
I think that the performance itself in the atrium was somewhat scripted.
Yeah.
But just in terms of the stuff, there's you look up and there'd be somebody playing drums up on one of the tiers. You playing drums on the tier, okay. Someone playing guitar. I was doing slide projections and other stuff.
I was moaning a lot to some Harper Fragment, and Lee was he had that 30-inch woofer and was thumping the bass.
Uh-huh.
But I just remember the chaos that happened.
I think one of my favorite memories from that is that, and I don't know if it was Anthony Owsley, but he had the bag full of boys' quotes. It which he was up the top floor and dumped all the little pieces of paper with all the Joseph Beuys quotes on them. And I think it was Anthony. It might have been Paul.
There was
Jordan,
somebody
I'm
with
not sure who it was.
with water. I remember water was going everywhere, like not squirt guns, but in my memory. But what sticks out the most to me, and I never really hear people talk about it, is when somebody took that potted plant and just.
Really?
Do you remember that?
No.
And it went shoo, go wham.
Really?
It exploded on the
I
bottom.
remember that.
It came from the top floor and it exploded, and nobody really saw it coming, and it silenced everyone. Everyone was like, and kind of everyone scattered for a second, and then it just kind of went back to normal. And I mentioned that on the website, and nobody said anything yet. And I even wrote Ed a letter about it, and he hasn't said anything. It's like, should I even mention the exploding potted plant?
It's too late. It's too late. Maybe he wished there was an exploding.
I mean, that was the part that really has astounded me the most. It's
Well,
just
I guess that gets back to my question about the relationship between high and low art in Atlanta at the
Yeah.
time. So how did the High Museum respond to this?
I think that they were very upset. In fact, I
Yeah.
remember Ed asked me to help him.
Clean it up?
No. Well, there probably was some of that, but initially to just assist him with the discussions with
mitigating.
the yeah, and I was.
That's a pharmacist.
Yeah. It was really my first experience in that world, certainly on that level, and I'm not sure what the word is, not horrified, but I understand where they were coming from in terms of liability, and I remember there was going to be ladders involved, and what do you mean ladders? And so there was a lot.
It was already on the edge before
Yeah.
the show happened.
And I think that was
But you helped them convince them to let him do it.
apparently, yeah, and I think probably small concessions were made, and other demands on their part were probably ignored, and just kind of went ahead and did it anyway. Clearly, I mean, it was a very chaotic thing. I don't think that's what they expected.
They would never have allowed
No,
everything.
certainly not.
There was no way.
Do you remember who you were negotiating with?
I sure don't. No,
I remember her. She had black hair. It was kind of long, glasses. She looked. Oh, I don't know.
I don't remember. But it was interesting. And
That would be a nice little quote from the film if we can get a statement from them.
from the eye, I do remember.
We didn't get invited back, I don't think.
No.
That's not with, no.
They were mad. They were
I
mad.
think they were upset that a mess was made, and that they just didn't quite understand how it fit into
The mission.
the mission. Right? Their
I mean,
mission.
who gets to go in trash museums?
Right.
It was really good. That was really, to me, that was the essence of that show, is the fact that we pulled it off, but we also really did. I don't know if we actually damaged anything, but
Oh, I don't
we
think so.
pushed that edge of like, oh my god. I mean, I was nervous during the show, like, oh my god, I can't believe it. And then when that plant came sailing, I mean, we were on the second floor, I think, and I caught the plant as it was on its way down, and it was a pot about this big around and about this deep,
Right.
and it was, I don't remember if it was a begonia or what it was, but it just,
It might have been an accident, maybe someone.
no, because it landed way out in the middle, and it just, you can imagine, it hit that marble floor and just went everywhere. Anyway.
Could you describe a couple other of your favorite shows, and maybe what it says about what 8-Hour was, or what people were trying to do?
The first style show for me was one of my favorites, and that's when we painted Me Black for the first time, and we were
I don't
performing
remember that,
out.
so I think that was pre. You may have done that on your own.
No,
So I don't
it was
remember.
Harper Fragment.
Really?
I went out there. We formed out in the front yard, and that was when Linda Sharp came running up to the stage. She said you couldn't see me. All you could see were my eyes and the moon behind me. And she said it looked like I was levitating. And I was singing I'll Rest for You. That was the first time I think we had performed I'll Rest for You at a show. But
Yeah, see, we have differing memories. I remember playing. That was a later one, I think.
no, At Rest for You was one of the first things we ever did that
I
we
remember.
saved.
I remember being outside, but I thought the first thing we did was indoors over there.
I mean, the first style show.
Yeah.
It was the first style show we did. It was outdoors, not the first show.
I do remember you being painted black.
And you said it was the blacklight show that people were squirting you with Dayglow paint.
I painted myself black a lot. Yeah, there was the Dayglow show, I think it was, and Ed had hooked me up with the microphone, and I sang to the house music just in the corner, and black lights were everywhere, but you couldn't see me, and they gave people squirt guns with Dayglow paint to come up and
That's a great idea.
paint me with Dayglow paint. So you couldn't see me, but you could see the paint hitting me. So while I wailed I specifically remember singing to Fly Like an Eagle,
Nice.
Steve Miller Band.
And Scott, what was one of your favorite shows?
It's hard to say. I mean, I think some of the later ones, like we were talking about the High or the thing at the Marquis or wherever, whichever hotel that was at.
Oh, the Marriott?
There's
The first night show?
No, well, see, there you go. You just opened up.
There's another
there was
one.
the thing down on Peachtree, the first night.
The first night.
Wrestling
Yeah.
ring and all the craziness going on around there. That was another just
Over the top.
over the top, and then just people filing in and walking through and coming out, and it was quite a show. And again, very little specific memories from that. Just and that's true for a lot of those shows. I don't remember shows as a whole necessarily. And certainly then there was the Mayans or Us thing, which was in the tent the next year, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think back, to the earlier days, certainly some of the style shows, particularly just setting up for them and just watching people get ready and
What do you think is there some common element that these specific shows illustrate? Was there some kind of 800 East?
The essence of 800 East, I would say.
well, that it was chaotic and there was very colorful and
dynamic.
very dynamic. That's a good word. Yeah.
A lot of integrity, a lot of art on a lot of different levels, from music to visual art to performance to the whole shebang, to the interaction with the audience.
Well, it certainly was chaotic, but it also struck me as, well, maybe not well organized, but well directed, well intentional and thought out, but maintaining that kind of chaotic element. Like, for example, there'd be a theme, and people, I don't know, through their own integrity or however
Carried it through.
Yeah, they respected the theme.
Yeah.
Well, I think that to somebody walking into the first night thing and not having any experience with that type of
Oh my God.
event before.
And there was a lot of children.
There was a lot of kids,
I was shocked about that.
And just to walk through that space, to me that would appear chaotic. I think
Yeah,
if I were in that,
certainly.
if I were something like the Mayans thing was much more rehearsed.
It was much more rehearsed, and it was more. It more. It wasn't quite so.
It was just more focused, I guess.
And it was safer for the public.
Mm-hmm.
The first show wasn't really safe for public consumption. It was like, oh, there's a child.
And there was no potted plant, but I nearly knocked the follow spot off of the tower when I was up there.
You mean up on the high?
In the Marquis, I think. I was on top of this big tower, this aluminum tower with follow spot. And I started
Which show was that?
with the wrestling ring.
Oh,
That was
That's
somewhere on
right.
Peachtree.
it was in the
Midtown
atrium.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
about 3 blocks.
I remember there was this long hallway you went down and then.
Yeah, it opened up, and I was swinging it around, and one of the bolts came loose,
Oof.
and
What, from the base of it?
Yeah. We had to
How
go
high up were you? That was,
40 feet.
oh, Jesus.
Big thing. And
Climbed
so
up there?
My friend Liz was up there, and she was holding on to my leg, one on my leg and one on the thing.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
I vaguely remember that.
That's funny.
Stop. But
Yeah.
nobody got hurt.
That's right.
See, I was chasing
Wow.
Dysfunction around that night
Oh, that's right.
with that broken dog. Remember that broken statue that I barked up its butt? And its head was broken. I was like, and she was running around.
So what did it mean?
What did it mean?
Yeah.
Uh,
Chaos. What's the...
I don't know that I can say what it meant.
Because one thing, everyone's telling me that this was the most meaningful time of their life. This is the best, and it was really significant to people. So I'm just,
Oh, so what did it mean to me, or what did it mean?
well,
What
the
did
show-
that
I don't know.
performance
It
mean?
just seemed like there's something tying all this chaos together.
To me, it was a party, and it was like a really really good party, where your friends were there and they were
It was
having a good time.
it was like sustenance.
Yeah, I don't think that this sort of thing has like always been a part of my adult life anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's not my job to figure out what it means as a whole.
Right.
It was fun to work together as a group, and everybody had their part, but everybody was kind of mixing and mingling, and
Mm-hmm.
could see their part of it, but could also see their part in the entirety of the performance. So it was more of just a party's not a good word. It was like a communion, I guess.
I was gonna say it's kind of like an arc for artists. It just kind of you could pile on and
Except there's only one of each kind.
yeah, right.
What did you mean when you said it was like sustenance?
It quenched a thirst, I guess, for me, and it seemed like it did. It kind of provided something satisfying as a whole
Mm-hmm.
for anybody looking to do some art or performance or both.
Yeah. It's because it always struck me that there was a kind of there was definitely give and take, and people put so much work into that place, and there was no money, so clearly people are getting some kind of sustenance
I'm
out of
sure.
it.
I was thinking of specifically, I don't know why, but the pumps, the water pumps that you
Uh-huh.
pump. I was thinking specifically of the water that comes out of those pumps is kind of 800 East was right there between where the water comes out in the end of the spigot.
Hmm.
It's sort of 800 East was kind of like not the bucket that you put the water in and not the pump, but as right where the water came. Whatever.
But I think there's some people that sit home and watch TV, and there's other people who want to do something creative, and I think, and I can't say what I think. It was just a spirit that brought people out
Uh-huh.
to be involved in all those things.
Well, I mean, was there any money? How was this funded?
Oh, I
How did
think
these
that there
things
was.
happen?
Yeah, how was it funded? I don't know. I don't remember there ever really being any money paid, like for performing or.
There was
I mean,
one
there
time
was,
or two times.
Like you had to pay what, $10 to get into the style show or something?
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think
I
there
don't
was
remember.
probably.
Yeah, there was
Cover
cover
charge.
charges
Yeah.
for those big shows. We got paid on a couple performances. The self-help one.
Oh, I
Never seen
I think he paid us all. He paid all the main.
Well, I mean, that funding came from whatever. There was some photographic or photography convention or something.
Yeah.
So they must have laid out some cash for that. I guess. I mean, I can't imagine the budget on that thing. Of course, who was it? Was it Bill Harrison,
Mm-hmm.
the guy who he worked at some sort of audio video supply?
Oh, the guy with the
place?
long hair. The
He
really
had
super
dark hair and round glasses, I think, and
I remember him having long hair.
but maybe ponytails or whatever.
Yeah.
But remember all that stuff just came from him, and I don't know
Okay.
how that worked.
Yeah. But no grants that you know of? It
You
wasn't-
know,
it
I
wasn't
never
city
really-
Yeah,
funded.
was there?
I never really. I don't think I ever even cared I don't think I ever had to care, except for what if we wanted to produce flyers or something. If it just that was the only time I remember having to deal with money at all. Otherwise, I didn't. It wasn't a concern of mine where
Yeah.
how Ed was pulling this off or how East was.
I think that
It's more a question for the organizers. But as you participated there a lot, and not just performing. I remember you working there, building stuff.
I can't remember so well these days, and I know I was way involved. I was kind of it was.
So what do you think? What specific qualities did you two bring to this collective? Skills or perspective?
I think background in music and
Pharmacology.
yeah, I guess projections
Uh-huh.
and an interest in performance art in general. I think
Uh-huh.
or multimedia type projection or not multimedia performance. And some skills and equipment.
Yeah, I remember you because I was mostly doing tech, but I remember you were the go-to guy if something wasn't working and I couldn't figure out. I'd look around for stuff.
I don't remember. I can barely remember. I know I provided my sound system a lot, but I know I was there a lot. My memory from that whole time period is starting to have gray spots.
We were talking about that yesterday. About that was part of my thinking in asking Robert to come over. Was,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well certainly he'll be able to fill in those gaps in my memory. We realized that both of us had a lot of gaps there.
Well, at our age, it's like a Venn diagram, right? You get the overlapping gaps.
Right.
What do you remember about the physical space, the buildings and grounds, the neighborhood? What was that like?
Well, it was very neighborhoody. I mean, I remember there just being a bunch of homes, and then there was the dead end, and there was that fence there that was just beyond the living space and workspace, right? Like there was the building, and then there was that fence, and then the warehouse in the back. Which is what big old cinder block building, I guess.
Perfect.
Yeah, there was like
It's
there was a
perfect.
garage door, I guess, wasn't there?
There was
a
one big garage door and a side
And
door,
the side door you'd go in, and then there was a backstage area,
or whatever you made out of
and
it.
it was sort of an L, I guess.
I think it was a rectangular building, but it had that built-in
Well, it had that
area.
little backstage area, but
Yeah.
that made it sort of an L.
Oh, that's right. You're right. Made it an L.
But I remember that it was kind of great that it was bare bones because you could kind of morph it into whatever.
It was cold in the winter with
Yeah.
that wood burner.
There was often heaters in there, though, as I recall.
Well, there was that stove. I don't remember heaters, electric heaters per se, but
Yeah,
I don't remember.
yeah.
But I remember that stove, and it barely kept the place warm, or maybe it overheated it sometimes. I
I
don't
remember
know.
it smoked a lot.
Yeah,
It's not
that's
one.
right. It did. Right. Yeah, it wasn't the best venting system. I have a vague memory of that, actually.
And do you recall anything about the relationship with the neighbors? Would they come to shows? They call
Well, the
police?
people across the street. What's his name?
I remember David Powell used to live down the street. He was a photographer, or maybe still is. I'm not sure, but he was always there.
Oh
taking
shoot! I
pictures.
can't think of his name. Sorry.
Who?
The guy that lived across the street.
Yeah, I do remember there being sort of a
People
warehouse across
always
the street.
would confuse us. We did look alike back then. I can't think of his name now. Starts with a C.
Uh,
Oh, well, I'll think of it in a minute. It hit him and his entourage. They were always quite inebriated. It was a risky neighborhood. I remember going there one day and getting involved in a shootout struggle right at the corner. It was like pow pow pow. I mean, I was as close as you are, and the guy's totally not able to control the gun. He's and people are scattered and running.
I don't remember it being. I don't remember feeling unsafe over there. Although
It was.
I guess it was a little skeevy. I don't know. It was. I mean, at the time, it was like it was way out there.
It was boondocking,
Island,
yeah.
But now it's. I don't know if you've driven down.
I went by on my
blow
way
your
in.
mind or what? I mean,
Yeah.
Freedom Parkway in the back. Of course, that was. I'm not sure when that Freedom Parkway happened, but maybe it was
I think
'96 or something.
95 or
95,
96.
96.
Yeah, it was before all that. It was sketchy.
Yeah.
Before all that started happening. Kerry Cahill is who I was thinking.
Uh-huh.
He lived right across the street.
Mhm.
And I'm surprised he wouldn't be contacted. I'm sure he hasn't been. Has he?
I don't know if he has or not, but I'll write the name down. Remind me when I get it.
Okay.
Could you talk about, maybe describe some of the significant personalities or characters that were involved?
Sasha Fu.
And tell us about Sasha Fu and what she brought to it.
She was zany and smart and funny. Still is, I'm sure. Cute. Multi expressive. She had a lot of different things to put into it to contribute. Who else? Wayne.
Yeah, what was Wayne's role? I always thought of 800 East as Wayne and Ed.
Mm-hmm. And what was Wayne like?
Wayne? Crass and sarcastic. Funny.
Very politically minded.
Smart.
It doesn't sound like a lot of the shows or performances were intentionally political, though.
No, I just meant political in the
His-
sense of like social politics and
Mm-hmm.
Him as a person. His character or whatever, his persona, yeah.
right.
Mm-hmm.
Dysfunction or Terry.
And how would you describe Dysfunction / Terry?
I don't know that I still sort of think about Terry and sort of that dichotomy, between Terry's just very quiet and soft spoken and Dysfunction was just way over the top.
Mm-hmm. So this was his character.
Yeah.
So it sounds like a lot of the people there had their own characters as well.
Yeah.
Deandra Peak, I think, was a huge, that's
Rosser.
Deandra Peak was sort of a drag character that I remember her hosting a lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I had my little girl too, and she used to love that. Yay! She would do that at home.
I mean, she had her own TV show for a while that paired up with the American Music Show. I think she had her own TV slot for a while.
Yeah, she said so on her email.
Oh, okay.
Stuff on YouTube, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
Let's see who else.
All the people, Raimondo
Yeah.
up there, and
Tell us about Raimondo a little bit.
just a metal sculptor, welder, collector of crazy stuff. Sort of like a Mad Max character, but not really. I mean, without the
Malice.
without the malice. That's a perfect word. And I keep in loose touch with him, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, I don't know, once every couple of years I think of him, and for whatever reason, give him a call. And
I think of him every day because he gave us as a wedding present a big gargoyle windmill